conducted as very, very limited sites on the terrorist infrastructure. You know what? West did immediately. World Bank gave $1 billion, and I think IMF or something. They gave $20 billion. This is actually, rewarding the terrorist. This is what pisses off others off. And the West think that by rewarding them, or somehow they have got stuck a deal with these terrorist countries. Believe me, no. Pakistan has been consistently fooling the West, and they themselves, their defense minister, some of their top-ranking officials have already confessed on camera that they have actually played double game. But Trump thinks he's smart. I don't think so. Trump will go away, and the next person will come. They let him fool the other person also. So what the Western powers are doing is actually rewarding the terrorists. This is keeping the terrorism alive, I'm afraid. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why people don't want to talk about Saudi Arabia's relationship to terrorism. Most of these like major groups, people in the West, or even like most familiar with, like Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Al-Nusra, those are like Wahhabi, Salafi terrorist groups that are like, primarily influenced by the ideology of Saudi Arabia, and that's where their funding originates from. So it's like, we're like allies with them, allegedly, So I don't know, it seems strange to me. I don't know, I think that, the Iranians have like a deep-seated sort of, political distrust of the West, So, and that's actually sensible.
Sorry, do you have full trust in the West? Like President Trump, he claimed that he was fighting Al Qaeda. Then last month or a few weeks ago, he was cheering the leader of Al Qaeda in Syria, saying about him, he's handsome, he's strong, he's all kind of, he was condoning, and he just cheeked hammered him and everything. So, do you trust them?
No, especially not.
I wouldn't trust any Western leader. Zero. Any Western leader. They have no morals. No morals. Whatever they're interested in, they will go with their interest.
Yeah, I'm sure the Western leaders' morals are somewhat different than other parts of the world's leaders.
This fact, is it true? You've seen this picture, giving the sun down.
Just think about your model of human nature. That humans are different. That power-hungry individuals in different parts of the world are fun. Are you what are you like? You think that like some cultures just make powerful people just have way better morals? It's been a known fact throughout history that power corrupts. This is a truism of human psychology. You think that Indian and Chinese leaders are immune from it, but the Western people, they succumb to the power corrupting influence. Like, it's just fucking retarded, man.
Well, I think, Sam, you're missing the second half of that quote. Power corrupts Western leaders.
I agree with that. Thankfully, our past leaders were corrupt. We have a lot of corruption. But thankfully, there's better at tackling this extremism than the previous governments and Western governments too. I see a lot of Western governments carrying their own citizens. I was surprised to find that even Switzerland is doing that. AJ, I feel like India and Israel have some common cause to do. We have both of Israel
human common enemy.
Yeah, the common enemy of Islamic extremism, things like ISIS, Boko Haram, the Taliban, Al Qaeda, Hamas, Hezbollah, all those organizations are garbage.
But I think this is
Some of the ones you threw in there,
but I think Israel helped Al Qaeda in Syria to take power of Syria, right? But they destabilized Syria. And by destabilizing Syria and bombing it every twice a week, they paved the way for Al Qaeda to take over Syria.
Sam, are you Israeli?
Israeli?
Are you Israeli? Are you Jew?
I'm a Jew, yeah.
From Israel? Yeah. We, the Indians and Israelis have much more first-hand experience of what Islam is and the oppression, the tactics they play, and it is unlike any other.
Yeah.
And I'm a minority, I'm not a Hindu, I'm an ex-Christian. And I can see, you can live with Hindus, there is no problem as such, until and unless you try to convert them or, you do something really bad. They have been very accommodating.
Yeah.
We have and government in exile, Tibetan government in exile in India. There are a lot of Tibetan Buddhists living in India. They don't create any problem here, no religious problem, no rights. Okay. We had Jews for over 2,000 years here in India, and there are Jews exactly, Zoroastrian. So the Hindus were always, they had problems, we have problems, but people could live. People could live with people. Yeah, there were skirmishes, but there was no problem. But when Islam came, it for 800 years, it was killing and mass killings and rape and subjugation and humiliation, and there was indiscriminate. Especially children and women were totally they were the worst sufferers, and we have not yet come out of that. Believe me, the generational trauma is still there. So the Western powers have they are forgotten, and they are lecturing us instead of lecturing the terrorists.
Yeah.
So that's really difficult on us. That's really difficult on us because we have been accommodating these people for so long, and now the Western somebody is coming in. We are bursting at times. We are angry. We have suffered a lot, and then third party is coming and saying, "Calm down, buddy, calm down."
Yeah.
That's not how it works. That's not how it works. We could have taken in. We have a common thing. Israel and the Jews got a separation Israel from, but we also have given two nations for Islam. There is no problem, isn't it? We have given Bangladesh, we have got Pakistan. We never threw it back. We said you leave peacefully, no problem. We even retained Muslims back in our country. See, they asked for separate country because they said we can't live with the Hindus. In the words, dirty Hindus. But we gave them separate nation, no problem. Go. But still they have not left. They are not satisfied. They again want to come back and attack India. That's what is happening. The Bangladeshis are also coming in and they are saying we will conquer India. The Pakistanis are also saying that we will come back to India and we will conquer India. They are not just saying that, they are actually doing it on the ground. That's a problem. They are infiltrating into India. They're
crying. They try to hurt you and do violence against you, and then they cry when you fight back. It's unbelievable. It's like, oh, they're gonna cry when you fought back instead of them trying to hurt you. Like real lovely culture. Sometimes people just forget that India was colonized by the Mughals for all these fucking centuries, and somehow that doesn't no one gives a shit about that. It's only about Western colonialism is the only thing that matters. But when Muslims do colonialism and sort of subjugate people for centuries, that doesn't matter at all. It's just unbelievable. These double standards.
When talking to party, when they want to create a doubt, they'll say, see, Mughals ruled India for so many years, but there are still Hindus. If we wanted to convert them, we could have killed every Hindu, isn't it? But in silence, when third party is not looking, when we are actually dealing with them, they'll say, we conquered you, we killed you, we took your women, and we did all these things. We are proud of that. That's the difference. And they're still saying that. You know? So this double standards and this hypocrisy and this kind of evilness, I don't find in any other religion. That's why we are prevented. We never had a problem with anybody coming to India. Like there are Rohingyas coming to India. Some of them actually infiltrated into India. They are not thankful for taking them in. They are like demanding. They are trying to take over. They are illegally settling in parts of India. They are actually joining terrorist organizations against India. Just imagine. We have Buddhists who never did nothing, never lighted or joined a terrorist organization. But Islamists who have come just 1 or 2 years ago.
Mr. You're saying so many stuff. Okay. All the financing that is going to the Muslim extremists are coming from the Christians. The weapons that they're using made by Christians. Okay. All the arms supplied to them by the Christians. Okay. So you did.
There are two parts to that. The problem is why are Western powers unable to radicalize, say, Hindus or Buddhists or other religions? They are unable to radicalize them. They are unable to make a terrorist organization of Hindus or Buddhists. That is because Islam represents as a ideology.
Different way. Look now in Ukraine.
Yes.
Whole country, they made it for war. Just they are using it to market their weapons, right? So
Yeah.
they do it in different ways, projects, different kind of projects. Okay, and Ukraine is Christian.
I agree with you. I don't know where you're from, but my take on Ukraine-Russian war is basically if somebody is coming and placing a missile near your home, I wouldn't like it. The US themselves didn't like it when Russia was moving their missile to Cuba, isn't it? So why should the US move their weapons near to Russia? That's not peaceful. I would say that.
It's not like the Western nation which are Christians. The Western nations who are the NATO, there's only one country which is those Christian nations are going to fight another Christian nation, which is Russia, by placing weapons and giving weapons to Ukraine and creating all the problems. So don't tell me that Christians are like peace lovers. No, they are the ones who are arming and financing the wars.
I've already said that. The Western leaders, not the people, the Western leaders are sometimes, they are promising, but when they come into power, they act differently. That's what, caught me off guard with Donald Trump. And I don't know what is compelling them to act the way they are doing. Sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of times, they are forced to comply with Islamic terrorism and, actually support terrorism. I don't know, like you said, the Donald Trump, the Syrian issue, he was on the terrorist watch list and he had a bounty on his head. Now he's actually shaking hands with leaders. This is strange, really strange.
No, it's
This doesn't work.
This is typical about Western leaders. Typical. Whatever they're interested in, they will just stick their hands in their hands. It's typical. Like I told you, they have no morals. No morals.
Yes, sir. Mr. Dargi.
I just want to let you know about Martin. I was just going to send you some thoughts.
Thank you, Nargi.
It's kind of interesting when you hear people like Sean. He categorically says that the Western, even probably mentioned the government or the leaders, but by extension, you hear some of the Muslims on this app, they tell you that the Western societies, they have more moral, they degenerate societies, they point at how the Western societies have lost their moral compass. And so I came up with a new term for the Muslims actually who say this. And again, we heard it, Sean, he categorically say they are immoral. So we call them Westophobic or Westophobia. So there is a Westophobia phenomenon that is taking up a lot of energy and momentum when Muslims talk about Western societies. And so again, Sean, you're Westophobic.
Great.
But that's
Great. I thank you for this, but now can you explain to me why Trump shook hands with the terrorist Islamic leader Giuliani and praised him?
Let's keep the part. Yeah, I can tell you.
Yeah,
Trump, first of all, Trump, it is not your typical, by any stretch of imagination, politician. He's just does unusually crazy things. And
okay, wait.
I'll tell you, I guess. Let me
It's not usual.
let me just
Macron of France received
Sean, will you ask me a question? Well, let me just go ahead. I did not let you finish. Go ahead and tell me your question, then I will answer it.
It's not only Trump, I told you, it's not only Trump. Trump, Macron, Germany, everybody received Giuliani, the terrorist leader, and they praised him. Continue. Explain to me why.
Yeah, actually, I don't know why this happened, because the man promises, Giuliani, I forgot his name, Giuliani, he promises that he's going to create a state in Syria that is going to be somewhat a semblance of, maybe a democratic, society. But I'll tell you this, I have a bad feeling about this. I think this man, he is going to turn Syria into another Afghanistan. What you hear from him right now, lip service to the Western leadership, is just a lip service. In the same way that, Taliban, remember, as you know, when the Trump made an agreement with them, they said, well, look, we're going to be doing this, women can go to school, and the rest of it. But once the Western, the Americans left, the Taliban became the most horrific government on the face of the earth, period, pretty much next to North Korea. So this man, the leader of Syria, two things will happen. Either he gets assassinated, or he will turn Syria into another Afghanistan. Mark my words. And now the reason they shook hands with him, I don't know. I need to look it up. But Trump wants to make a deal everywhere with anyone. Remember the optics that he put as a showcase with the North Korea leader about 8 years ago. Nothing came out of it. North Korea now has more powerful ballistic missiles. They have more atomic weapons. They have more of a threat to the region and the world. So what Trump does, it really does not result in any kind of measurable success in terms of making these deals. So this is no different. I don't give any credence, even though people pay any attention to what shook hands with this man or not. But the point that I was making.
How much France?
Sean, let me just finish. Oh, hold on. Sure. The point that I was just trying to make was not a political point. It was a moral, ethical point. The claim that the Muslims are making that the West has lost its moral compass. That is, and they give you a reason why. And they are so naive. All they have to do to look back at the Islamic country and see the plight of the people in the country. For example, the child marriages, child molestation, the plight of the women, prostitution, the drugs, rapes that goes on in Afghanistan, in Iran, in Yemen, and the rest of those countries. If anybody has lost the moral compass, are these Islamic countries, particularly the six theocratic countries. But the problem is this, Sean. These countries, they do not have the how can I say? They do not have the will. They do not have the mechanism to collect information in terms of some of the crimes being committed against to the citizen. Again, I give some examples: prostitution, child marriages, and the rest of it. And so we have no good statistics in terms of what happens in the Islamic country. I cannot be sure, but I can tell you from what I see, at least, that they have the one actually they've gone in an opposite direction in terms of having lost their morals. But let me just finish with this, and I'm not too surprised. If an ideology offers you Sharia laws, if an ideology offers you fatwas, if an ideology provides an opportunity for the child marriage, and I can go on and on and on, I am not too surprised. The results in the field in these countries are horrifically bad. So Sean, all you have to do to just go back, by the way, you are a Westophobic man, and you need to take a look at the countries, what Islam has done.
You didn't justify
the moral issue.
Ali, you didn't justify your accusations. I told you about France who received him, Germany, everybody who welcomed him, and you have no explanation except to tell me that I am Muslimophobic. So if I tell you all those Western nations received the terrorists, Islamic terrorists, your answer to me, oh, you're Westernphobic. That is really smart of you.
Hi everyone.
Well, let me just finish with Sean. The point about the moral, the ethical and moral kind of conduct of the Western cultures versus Islamic cultures, and that was my main point about this isolated situation with Syria. What will happen to this man? And maybe he's been encouraged. Maybe the leaders in the West, they see a light of perhaps something different than what had happened in Syria for the last 15 years. Maybe this man, the leader, can provide an opportunity. They're encouraging him to do a good thing in Syria. But I seriously doubt if Syria will turn into another Afghanistan in about 5 years.
So I was Westernphobic if I say they were wrong in receiving and condoning Islamic terrorists. That means I am Westernphobic. This is how you explain it? Where did you learn this?
Guys, I want to discuss about you guys saying that Islam is not true. Basically, if you don't know, the Quran itself, it's a proof that Islam it's true, okay? Because Islam stands for falls with the Quran. So if the Quran is truly from God, then Islam is true. If it's not, the entire religion collapses. So let's test that. Okay?
Yeah.
The Quran challenge is still unmatched. Okay? The Quran challenged humans over 1,400 years ago. So in Surah Al-Baqarah, there is a quote says, and if you are in doubt about what we have sent down to our servant, then produce a surah like it. So since then, no one has moved that challenge. Not the top poets of the time. Like the Arabs were masters of language. Not modern AI. Not any scholar or any enemy of Islam has done that.
I did it.
Okay. Shut up. Let me finish it.
Well, you don't have to be rude.
I mean,
You don't have to tell me to
you
shut
just
up.
cut me off.
Just make your point.
They cut me off. Anyways, despite centuries of attempts, no one has produced something that equals to the Quran in linguistic perfection, depth of meaning, arithmetic balances, prophetic insights, legal and moral guidance. Okay, this is strange unless
this now?
Guys,
I get your point.
no.
Can I respond? I get your point. Can I just respond now?
Yeah, go
The shortest Quran in the Quran is we have granted you al-Kathar, to pray and sacrifice, indeed your enemies the one
ahead.
That's a whole
Makes
surah.
sense.
Okay?
Okay.
Now you compare that to, and here's a quote by Emerson. What is success? To laugh often and much, to win the respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty and to find the best in others, to leave the world a little bit better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or redeemed social
You're
tradition.
just
To
really
know that one life has
point.
breathed easier because you have lived, that is to have succeeded. No, that is a more wise, profound quote than we have granted you Cathars to pray and sacrifice your enemies off. It's way wiser, it's way more important, it's more
The
beautiful.
thing is, you're reading something bad, you're not making a point. Basically,
What I'm making is it's
you're not
better.
expecting.
It's
No,
better than
you're
that.
not.
It's morally,
You're not.
it's aesthetically and morally superior.
Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was unlettered and lived in a desert society. How did he know these facts? He had no microscopic, no telescope, no labs. Yet the Quran described it accurately. So you're saying,
Oh my God.
no, you're reading
There's so many errors, there's so many scientific errors in the Quran. But let's just stick on the one thing, which is the falsifiability test, the mega surah like it. So remember, the shortest surah in the Quran is, we've granted you Cathar, pray and sacrifice, indeed your enemies cut off. And then
Again,
compare that.
you're reading
Here's
something
the surah
bad,
that I
you're not
wrote.
making a point.
Here's the surah that I wrote. Don't
You're
kill,
wrong.
don't
What the
steal,
fuck?
don't
You're not
murder,
wrong.
don't torture, don't enslave, don't lie, love your fellow man, and strive for the flourishing of the people on earth. Your Lord make you stewards, not tyrants, and blessed are those who sow peace and righteousness. That is morally superior and better than, oh, we granted you Cathar, pray and sacrifice your enemies.
Listen, Sam, I get your point. I get what you're saying. The thing is, if you really think that Islam is a false, then you must explain to me who authored the Quran if it wasn't God. How did he, an alerted man, produce the most powerful and charismatic books in history? Why does Islam continue to spread even among educated people? These questions have no honest answer unless Islam is true. So,
No,
can you explain to me this?
sure.
Yeah,
The Quran,
please, explain
the
to me.
Quran has many scientific errors. The Quran says that stars are lamps used to help devils, that babies come from being a fluid between the back and the ribs, that the earth can talk, that ants can talk, that mountains are like pegs to stabilize the earth, that bones form, they get clothed in muscle, which is not true, they can form in parallel, that a flock of birds dropping those stones can destroy armies of elephants. The earth is flat. The Quran is full of scientific errors, full of them. It's exactly what you'd expect of a 7th century illiterate, uneducated man was talking. It's exactly what you'd expect from it. It contains no knowledge that a man of his time couldn't have known, and it would have been trivial to include in Quran information, DNA, information about black holes, information about supernovas that no man could have known. But it doesn't include that.
Facing someone who claims Islam is false because the Quran has scientific errors, this is a very common argument. Okay, I get what you're saying, but it often relies on misunderstanding or mispresenting it, the text of the Quran. Okay, so let me break it down to you. No proven scientific error exists in the Quran because critics often twist the translation, or maybe they ignore the Arabic meaning of the verses. Most so-called errors, okay, you understand classical Arabic, you read verses in context, you avoid forcing modern science into them ancient words. Okay? So let's say, I'm gonna give you an example. Let's say the sun sets in a muddy spring, start of Kaf. Okay? Critics say this is a scientific error that the Quran's the sun literally sets in water. Okay? An Arabic verse says, حتى إذا بلغ المغرب الشمس وجدها تغرب في عين حمى. Means until when he reached the setting of the sun, he found it setting in the dark, muddy spring. Okay, basically, the key point to this, the verse says he found it, meaning from his perspective. Just like if you say the sun sets into the sea today, it's a visual description, not a scientific claim. So,
I never mentioned the muddy spring. I only mentioned
I'm just
the
giving you an
actual errors.
example.
Yeah,
No.
I'm only mentioning the actual errors. The actual errors are that
errors.
babies do not come from a fluid between the back and the ribs, and that stars are not lamps that pelts devils, and ants can't talk, and the earth can't talk, and mountains aren't like pegs, and that bones don't form first and then get clothed in muscles, that birds dropping stones can't destroy elephants, and that the earth was never not
she's just like, I think, too bad. I think that by the way, Sam, I do appreciate, I looked at the very latest version of the document that you have. It's really a good one and very specific, and it provides a good information for people who want to be more specific in terms of the verses in the Quran and what is wrong with it. That's a good approach to get into the weeds. But I generally speaking have a different approach, which is more of a macro level. I think the questions, for example, would you believe a man who goes to a cave for 23 years and then during a certain time of the year, and he comes out and he says he's spoken to God, Archangel Gabriel, which in turn received the words from the God, with even a single fly being on the cave wall to tell you if actually anything happened. That's kind of one. Would you believe in that like that? If you don't believe in, therefore, this is not the word of God. By true, when people say Bible is true, Quran is true, I think I take it it's a divine, comes from God, Allah. That's what the truth means to me. So I wouldn't believe in that like that, particularly when the man himself claims that he says some of the verses that he heard, actually they were from Satan. And on top of that, he forgets some of his own verses. So of course, and then the other one is a lot of it, good stuff of it, actually being stolen from the Old Testament and the Bible, itself. But in terms of this being a great book and nobody could produce a book like this is the most stupidest comment you can ever hear. For example, this book is written so badly that no decent writer would make an attempt to write so badly in terms of the ideas being connected. They have something that it kind of makes sense. It doesn't make any sense. But if you break it down into two categories, one category, what I would say, there's not a single thing of value in Quran, of good value, that has not been said, written, or taught by people way before Muhammad. Everything is in there. But the horrible thing is Quran has menacing, horribly bad ideas in it. These are, again, the Sharia laws, either the Quran itself or hadiths, the concept like the fatwa, kafir killings, and the rest of it. Who would come up with this menacing, horribly bad ideas? So in a sense, this is a horribly, horribly bad book. And I'm hoping having one book like this is bad enough. We don't need a second one. And that is why nobody made an attempt to write it, because it's just written horribly so bad. Again, no decent writer would make an attempt to write a horrific writing like this. Anyway, that's all I have more to say.
Well, I mean, it's also like the weakest. I don't know what it is about Muslim apologetics. They just are kind of like the weakest version of apologetics. At least Christians can form something resembling a coherent argument for their beliefs. For whatever reason, Muslim apologetics tend to be, so like that claim, right? That, I challenge you to write another book like the Quran, right? I mean, that's not a claim for anything. That's not a supporting evidence for anything, right? There's never been another book like the Odyssey. There's never been another book like Catch-22. There's never been another book like Crime and Punishment. So fucking what, right? Like it's not a testament to the truth of the novel, the uniqueness of it, right? It's just a bizarro claim that is masquerading as some kind of an apologetic, but it doesn't actually prove anything. And I don't think that they know that it proves anything or not, right? It's just like what the book says, so therefore they feel some obligation to repeat it as though it is a proof for the book. But another one is it was copied, right? It was copied faithfully. So if I have a bad text and I copy it faithfully for thousands of years, if I have a text that's full of errors and nonsense and I copy it faithfully for 1,000 years, who the hell cares, right, that it was copied faithfully? That makes not a lick of difference, right? It's just as errant as it was 1,000 years ago, whether it was copied faithfully or not.
That's right. It is funny that the book wasn't actually copied faithfully, that you have early codexes that are different. Like before Uthman burned rival versions of it, there were different versions of the Quran, different surah orders, different verses included or excluded, different, there's a whole bunch of different variations in the Quran. So actually, that's not even true. So it was very funny. This woman came in and she was like, "Oh, you could never make a verse like it, a surah like it." And I was like, "Yeah, but I did that already." And then that got her pissed off. And then she immediately went to change the subject to, "Oh my God, there's always scientific miracles." And I'm like, "Okay, what about all the scientific errors?" And then she just like rage quit. Like, I don't know, just can't withstand argument.
I don't think anybody here defend the Quran, so why you're wasting your time on fighting the Quran?
A woman just came in and was defending the Quran, so now we're doing a post fight. And we're now doing a post. The whole room is that Islam is not true, and I have proof. So it's unsurprising that when you're in this room, that I might want to speak about why Islam is false.
Okay, well, do you think the Bible, the Old Testament, is true?
No.
None of those holy books are true, right? So none of them is like, all of them is just false.
That's right.
I think the same way. When we say, again, in my way of thinking, when we say these books are true, I think the intention is that they are the word of God. They are divine words. From that perspective, of course, from an atheist perspective, such a thing doesn't exist. All of these books are man-written. But there is a degree of quality, that's not a good word, in these books. And Quran is the horrific manifestation of how a book could be written, so badly. Horribly. Let me just finish. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Again, the reason I'm saying this, again, I'm going to repeat myself. I think I need to do this. As I mentioned, if you broadly break down Quran into two kind of concepts. One, all of the ideas, again, as I said, there's not a single value item of value in this book that has not been said, written, or thought before. There's nothing new in terms of the good stuff in the book. But the menacing idea in this book, and this menacing idea of the Sharia laws, the fatwas, the honor killing, that I can go on and on and on and on. These are the beauties, horrific beauties, and I say this in contradiction, of course, that this menacing idea and cult offers, which gives you the societies that you have right now in the Islamic country. They're horrible places to live in. And so, anyway, please, I have more to say, but you wanted to say something. Go ahead, Shah.
You said the Quran is the worst. I disagree with you because the Bible, the Old Testament, is the one who created all this hallucination. Example, this Noah Ark, where Noah was not able to convince his family to believe in him, but convince all the animals in the world to go to his ark. It's just those stupid things in the Bible. The Quran just quoted them, right? And he just reiterated them. They just say them again and again. So all the hallucinations, all those crap came from the Old Testament, okay? The Quran just copied them. And sometimes tried to beautify them a little bit, and sometimes went crazy about them. But the hallucination came from the Old Testament.
Okay, tell me where in the Old Testament, where do you find in the Old Testament the concept of fatwa, or the concept of jihad, or the concept of some aspects of the Sharia law? I mean, the Old Testament is a horrific book in terms of its cruelty and all of that stuff, but making the claim that Quran is bad because the Old Testament is bad. Tell me, show me where the concept of fatwa and honor killing is in. Not honor killing, I mean kafir killing, the rest of it. If you can show me, I can go look it up and I may agree with you.
There are tons of them. Okay, I don't have time to go and look them up for you, but you can look them up yourself. Just look them up yourself, search them on Google, and find them, okay? Or maybe some educated man can educate you, but I've seen lots of them.
This is kind of like a distraction or a deflection from the question at hand. Like, why are we talking about Christianity when the question at hand is whether or not Islam is true and the Quran is false. This just seems to be kind of like whataboutism. I mean, unless you're going to say that Islam plagiarized, Christianity, which it certainly did. I mean, I was just talking the other day with somebody about the Islamic end times, right? And lo and behold, like half of the Islamic end times is like Jesus coming back and like the second coming of Jesus and like all this stuff about Jesus. It just seems so like directly plagiarized from Christianity. It's almost to the point of being a little bit ridiculous.
The coming of Jesus is not in Islam at all. It's not in Islam at all.
That is not true in any way, shape, or form, Sean.
Isa.
Yeah, Isa is not coming back again. He was risen by Islam. He was risen to God to fool the Jewish people and the Romans. They fooled them. They created someone who looks like him.
Yes. Have you read this book, Sam? Sean, sorry. Have you read it?
It says Shukri Alahum. It says they made it like somebody just looked like him, so they will be satisfied and to crucify him. Okay, so they crucify the one that is similar to him. Just like it is a stupid way, but this is their idea. Okay, this is their version of the story.
Jesus appears prominently in the end times narrative of Islam.
Never.
Oh my God. Sean, are you sure you want to die on this hill? Because I'll pull it up, and I don't want you to
Don't tell me it's in the hadith or
That's
something.
too bad.
Quran. Okay. Those hadiths.
All right, give me a minute.
So Ali Raza, you're from Iran. How is it going now in Iran? With the fight between Israel?
Yeah, I don't have the first-hand information actually because I live in the United States, but I am hoping that I don't even care if it's Israel or any country that is able to completely, fully destroy all of the nuclear facilities and capabilities in Iran, that we don't have to deal with this menace of a fanatical, cruel, corrupt, bloody, the rest of the stuff of the Iranian regime to get close to having an atomic bomb. And even if there is, I'm probably diverging a little bit, Sean. So again, to just summarize, I hope that Israel gets the job done and completely, destroy Iran's capability, at least for some time, to be able to enrich the uranium, get this out of my mouth. And they have the capabilities to build the atomic bomb.
That could cause lots of innocent people to die. Do you care?
Of course, I care. But my concern is if the atomic bomb is developed by Iran and it could be used as a deterrent in a horrific way, I mean, even without the atomic bomb, just take a look, Sean, what havoc that have caused in the Middle East. And the proxy wars with Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, and the rest of it. That have completely destabilized the region. Okay, so even without the atomic bomb, they've been able to do this. Now imagine if they had the atomic bomb and using that as a kind of weapon that we could use it. There could be a lot more menacing as there are right now. So I'm hoping that they will. Again, I really don't care which country is doing it. It could be American, Israeli, whoever. As long as they're taken up. Go ahead.
Okay, but all what Iran wants is to have Israel give equal rights to the Palestinians. Why don't Israel just give equal rights to the Palestinians and then solve the problem?
Because it is not Iran's business to get involved with.
Well, they said
no, it's not. No, you could provide moral support. You could engage in political activities when Iran has done. And I can tell you categorically, with a few exceptions, Israel has not done anything to Iran. I mean, look at the last few decades. And maybe just recently there was some assassination and certain attacks. Put aside the recent kind of activities, I have no idea. I know why. Why is it that Iran really has no business to be the enemy of Israel? And so the Hamas is, Hamas is a terrorist organization, it's not a non-Christian, okay? And by the way, I can tell you, one could make an argument that Iran and Hamas are substantially, but not entirely, responsible for all of the killing in Gaza. And if Iran would have kept their dirty hands out of the whole situation, if the Hamas would have recognized there are no way that they can compete with Israel, would have made some political, agreements, have more freedom, maybe more land, maybe more kind of a structural and political power. They would have been better off.
Equal rights, just equal rights.
That's fine. That's okay. I have no problem with that. Fine. Equal rights. But you're asking me, Iran, we're talking about Iran. Iran has no business. As a matter of fact, Iran has done more harm in killing the people in Gaza than anyone else. I think I put, again, not totally, but substantially, the killing of the people in Gaza is responsibility substantially of Hamas as well as Iran.
Well, okay. If you go and sit beside or talk to Benjamin Netanyahu, would you tell him to give the equal rights to Palestinians, or would you say no, treat them like you are and put them in cages or whatever, and don't give them equal rights? They are just subhumans.
Well, I don't know. What I would say, first of all, I think most people, Sean, as you know, they are seeking this phantom idea of the two-state solutions, which has really never been on the table. And the way that
but not the two-state rights, not two-state solution, even for that.
Yeah, anything. Well, what do you mean when you say equal rights?
I said equal rights. I didn't say don't just take me for a ride, okay? Just equal rights. Talk about it.
Well, I'm asking you a question. When you say, Israel, the government, the prime minister, give Palestinians or people in Gaza equal rights on certain things, what are you talking about?
No,
give me some examples.
Certain things. Equal rights in everything. Okay. So if there's a gate or there's any gate that somebody has to go or check in or something to be checked through it, the Jewish people have to go through it as well, not only the Muslim. Okay, I'm not a Muslim. Okay, if nobody needs to be checked, if the Jewish people doesn't need to be checked, then the Muslim doesn't need to be checked. If you want to apply for a permit to build a house, you use the same form that the Jewish people use. And there's no mention in that form about your religion, okay? Your ID card should be exactly the same except your personal information and nothing about the religion. Your ID is the same as yours. So just equal rights, okay? Just equal rights. In the voting system, they can vote in the parliament, they can vote for the prime minister, for whatever. Just equal rights. It's just equal rights, 100% equal rights.
So let me just.
Sean, I have my receipts. Sorry.
Yeah, let me just. From the previous conversation. Now, are you talking about the Arabs living in Israel and having been Israeli citizens? There are 2 million Arabs actually live in Israel.
No, even in Gaza and West Bank.
Good. No, good. Well, the thing is, the problem is this.
Listen, I'm not
sure.
And Indian refugees and exile. All the Palestinians. All the Palestinians, they need to have equal rights, period, okay? They still have houses there. They still have lands there. They have IDs. They have everything. So they need to have equal rights.
Are you talking about the Arabs living in Israel as the citizen of Israel?
They said all the Palestinians, all AWL, the Palestinians.
Look,
whether they are in Palestine now, or whether they are in Jordan now, or whether they are in Syria now, or whether they are in USA now, all the Palestinians who originated in Palestine need to have equal rights with the Jewish people.
I am really confused. If a Palestinian lives in the US or some other places, what business of Israel is to give them
You live in
equal rights?
you are in,
I don't understand what you're saying.
listen, you live in the US, but when you go to Iran, you have the same rights as the Iranian, right?
Well, I don't want to go there. I presume. I don't know. I haven't tested.
Okay. Well, the same thing. Since you have all the rights that another Iranian has, and you live in the United States, the Palestinian who live in the United States need to have the same rights as the Palestinian who still live in Palestine. Okay? It is not magic. I'm not giving you like a puzzle or some rocket science. Okay, and I'm not Westrophobic to just call me names. If you don't understand what I'm saying, to call me Westrophobic and call me names, okay? Just take it as simple. It's simple, okay? This is a grade 5. Okay, grade 5 student would understand it. Equal rights.
You know, again, sorry. Maybe I am. Maybe your question at the elementary grade level, grade 5.
Okay.
But you,
Okay, I'm done with you.
let me break this thing down. Let's talk. Let's be a little bit more precise. We are probably, from what you're asking, I can put you 3 categories of Palestinian or Arabs. Palestinian, the group that lives in Israel, 2 million people. The groups that live in West Bank, in Gaza, and the rest of the Palestinians that live in the United States. Those are the categories you're talking about, right? And you're talking about equal rights.
No, not in the United States. I said an exile, okay?
And what if, okay, let's just take that. If you are an exile in the United States,
Every country in the world, okay?
if you are an exile in the United States, I don't care from which country you're from, you have to abide by the secular laws of the United States. As a matter of fact, the Constitution of the United States affords anyone from any country, whether a tourist visa, a green card, let me just finish. You're interrupting me. I can't engage with you.
Understanding, okay? You can't understand the question, so I'll give you.
Okay, then I don't understand. But thank you. So the point that he doesn't understand, when you are in the United States under any condition, tourist visa, green card, and work visa. By the way, these are privileges. These are not rights. The government can take it away from you. But when you are in this country and you are a non-citizen, the Constitution affords you every single right which is in the Constitution with 2 exceptions. You can't vote and you cannot run for office. But other than that, you are under the protection of the United States. So Palestinian individual that he's talking about, he is the rights are protected in the United States, with the exception that I just gave. So again, I wanted to talk about the right of the Arabs living in Israel, and then Palestinians in West Bank and Gaza, but we could not get into an agreement to understand, for me to better understand this question. Anyway, he's gone now.
I had my receipts. I wanted to press him on this whole Jesus in the end times, Islamic account thing. He is, a lot of them are in hadiths, but those hadiths are generally seen as authentic, right? They're like some of the strongest, right? Like Sahih hadiths, as I understand, that are like most accepted in these Islamic traditions, and that's where we get that Islamic end times ideology where I think Zed mentioned it earlier. Isa, right, is what they call Jesus, right? That like Jesus is basically going to come back and have like a second coming and, you know, slay the evil, and like it just seems like a total plagiarism to me. Just like a, you know, Muhammad or like, you know, other Islamic scholars copying off, you know, the Christians' exam.
Yeah, the concept in Islam actually, and Mahdi or the Sam, you wanted to say something?
No.
Yeah.
I mean,
So yeah, the concept of, you know, the end of the world is common, you know, in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, as you all well know. I don't have to educate anyone on the stage here. I know you. But in Iran, in Islam is, you know, this concept of Mahdi, the second coming, or somebody will come. And in a Shia Islam, Muslim or Islam, is the concept of the 12th Imam, who actually was roughly, the story is that he's the last Imam, and he disappeared when he was 11, 12 years old. And he appeared again and he disappeared again. So the entire Shia sect are waiting for the second coming of the 12th Imam, you know, the end of the world concept. And the Sunni Muslim, they have this concept of the Mahdi, you know, the individual that will come and the end of the world, the Armageddon, and Day of Judgment, and the rest of it. But they have, you're right here, they have the concept of Jesus actually being a helper, supporting, and doing certain things at the Judgment Day and the end of time and all of that stuff. Yeah, Jesus plays a role, but I'm not sure if this is actually a big role, by the way. And the Jesus and the Mahdi, they go up there and they sit, you know, to the left or right hand of the, you know, God throne up in heaven. But I'm not quite sure if it's exactly in Quran or is basically more incredible hadith they talk about this concept. I'm not sure.
it's so weird when you say this that will come to the defense of Islam. Like, bro, you're a Christian. These people are trying to deconvert Christians. They like, literally, Muhammad is saying that Islam Christ is not God. That, you know, they're trying to be a sort of a rival religion to take people away from Christ and worshiping Christ. It's very surprising to me that they wouldn't want to sort of side with me on this.
Was Muhammad lazy?
No, very much not so.
But like, why does the mountain have to go to him?
Where's that expression even from?
Sorry, it was just a random thought. I apologize.
No, Muhammad was not lazy. He was a very busy man. My travels.
It's very hard to have multiple wives and be lazy.
Here's what it says about the origin of the expression. It says, if the mountain won't put Muhammad, then Muhammad must go to the mountain. His problem, if things do not go your way, you must adapt to take initiative to make them happen. The phrase comes from a Western telling of a story dubiously attributed to Francis Bacon, not from Islamic sources. The anecdote goes something like this. Muhammad claimed to command a mountain to come to him. When it didn't move, he said, "Very well, Muhammad will go to the mountain." This point of the story is to make Muhammad look foolish or insincere. But it's not a Muslim saying. It has no basis in the Quran or hadith. It was likely made up by Christian European writers in the early modern period. Today, the proverb has lost its anti-Islamic connotation, as used generally to be flexible, rather than conform to plans and take matters into your own hands. I mean, it's a pretty good expression of like, yo, sometimes shit doesn't work out for you, make it happen, bro. It's a good phrase.
I agree with it. It was very
for example, in Rome do as Romans do, or not all roads, and goes to China or something like that. So it's probably.
I think the roads lead to Rome.
What's it? Say it again?
All roads lead to Rome.
Oh, there we go. I got it backwards, right. But there is something about China too. I forgot. Yeah, all roads lead to Rome. Yeah, that's correct. Thank you. So we have something like that.
You know what's even wilder to me than like Christians defending Muslims is like, I don't know what you call them, like woke or like leftist people or like, people in that community like defending Muslim or somehow, I don't know what's going on in their brain. It might be like a little bit of, this sort of racial ideology overriding other common sense because, I mean, I understand that they are people of color and that they might have experienced something that could be considered oppression, despite the fact that they themselves are the source of much oppression in the world. But it seems wild to me. It would be like, somebody like supporting, if like they were like black Nazis, right? Supporting a Nazi because they're black, even though they hate you and they want you to die, basically. I mean, like anybody from the LGBTQ group, anybody who is of a different religion, anybody who is, not of that group, right, it would be in direct threat in a Muslim society. I mean, like in a very imminent way, in a way that's not the case in any other Western society. Yet anybody who says that is then labeled with this moniker of Islamophobic, right? Like I've been called Islamophobic a bunch of times just simply for saying like, yeah, this religion has problems. This religion has issues, right? This religion breeds extremism. This religion, fosters all kinds of crazy shit.
I feel
yet it's the woke people who do the most defending of it.
Yeah, I mean, anything is what white brown person want to defend. I think there's a lot of huge problem with Islamophobia in this that. Like these people that are just irrationally afraid of Islamophobia, to such a toxic degree. I think we should sort of like stand up against Islamophobia.
Is that meta? Like, how do you say that?
Islamophobia?
But do you double the phobia?
It's like double
meta. It's like meta Islamophobia. No, I guess phobia. I don't know.
Yeah, I just think there's a huge problem with Islamophobia, both on this app and in the world. And, the thing you said about the Muhammad versus the mountain versus Muhammad, I wrote this thing of like combining different expressions together just for funsies, like all the roads to Rome are paved with good intentions, or there's the 7 deadly wonders of the world, or don't, it's like shooting messengers in a barrel, or like,
I find that one offensive, personally.
The strawman argument that broke the camel's back.
That's brilliant. I love mixed red. I love it. I'm going with this, Sam. I'm gonna own that. Like I'm gonna get
A wolf in emperor's clothing. Let's see. Beauty
Like the hand is worth a wolf in sheep's clothing. Something like that.
Beauty is in the evil eye of the beholder. Blood is thicker than water under the bridge. Let's see. Don't judge a book until you walk a mile in its shoes. Don't put the cart before the storm. Speak softly, but carry the world on your shoulders.
Judge not unless you be the judge. No, that doesn't work. Never mind.
An apple a day keeps your friends close and your enemies closer. You can lead a horse to water, but they'll drink you under the table. A leopard divided against
I like that one.
its spots. A leopard divided against itself can actually spots. Like he who lives in glass houses cast the first stone. We'll burn that bridge when we get to it.
Sam, that's good, buddy. We'll burn that bridge when we get to it.
These are good. Motivational posters or something, yeah.
And what's a mix of different sayings. You know, it's a leopard divided against itself can't count it for, what was it?
It counts for
Can't count this. That's
You know,
If an old dog barks up the wrong tree while no one's around, can you teach it new tricks? Let's see. Yeah, some more. A watched pot never calls the kettle black.
Where are these from? In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man doesn't need gold.
I think they're just from Sam's brain.
They're just from my brain. I just wanted to like combine different expressions together.
These are pretty good.
Thanks.
Yeah, they're brilliant, dude. That was a great idea. Bravo.
Don't fire until you see the windows of their souls. Don't shoot a gift horse in the mouth. All I want for Christmas is my 2 birds a month, though. That's not good.
Wait, I like you can't judge a gift horse by its teeth. No.
That one's the original.
No,
It's raining. It's raining. Catch pajamas. Don't feed an elephant. Don't feed the elephant in the room. Forbidden fruit. Look before. But yeah,
You need to count. You need to.
I might generate more of these because they're fun.
Have you ever heard of something in Russian called Cherno Myrdinka?
No.
So it's basically there's a famous Russian, I guess, Soviet or ex-Soviet politician named Cherno Myrdin, and he had a penchant for like tripping over his own tongues in really memorable ways, and they were named, you know, his sort of unintentional aphorisms were called Cherno Myrdinka, which is like it's like saying Trumpism or something.
Yogi Berra.
Yeah, so his most famous one is we wanted the best, but it turned out like always. There's another one. This has never happened. So just imagine like some like corrupt, incompetent Soviet official reading these out on some televised broadcast as a result of some political failure. The other one is this has never happened before, and now it's happening again. Another one is we have accomplished all items from A to B. Another one is I will not speak much, otherwise I will say something.
That's so good. Have you guys seen?
what is this guy's name?
Cherno Myrdin, CHERNO Myrdin. If you Google we wanted the best, but it turned out like always. You can find.
That's so good. That's so good. Have you guys seen the movie? And I hope some people know about it. Have you guys ever seen the movie Boondock Saints?
Yeah.
Yeah. You realize that's a good movie, right, Mike?
No, I don't agree with that as well.
That's terrible. You should do. That's too bad. You should have liked it, buddy. I'm surprised you didn't like it. There's an old man in there that would do the same thing. It's actually the same. He would mix up different sayings. He's like, "Why don't you make like a tree and get the F out of here?" But there's Sandra Bullock does that also in Demolition Man. If you've seen Demolition Man, she would mix up sayings over and over, and she, she's like, "You really licked that guy's butt." He's like, "I think you mean kicked his butt."
Sounds hot.
Well, I mean, Sandra Bullock's cute, but that was it's a weird thing to say. But I think you're meaning for what she's suggesting to be done. You might like that. That's kind of weird.
I just want to make it awkward, but I'm not going to comment them. I'm not just going to let the rest.
All right, fair enough.
Thank you, Andrew.
Once I heard Salman Rushdie was playing words with the titles of the books. And so he, for example, he would say Romeo and Julia. And let's see, the one that caught my attention for Quran, he says, go run, Quran, go run. So that was kind of interesting. Anyway, I forgot the rest of them, but it's a very creative way of renaming some pretty good books.
That's a name.
But go run is a good one.
Here's a North Middle Eastern equivalent of Jordan.
Here's a few more. All work and no play makes jack of all trades. Better late than sorry. Two wrongs are better than one. Sticks and stones are mightier than the sword. Even a broken customer is right twice a day. Only money will tell.
So, Tyler, what I wanted to mention really quickly, I think one of the reasons that people are sympathetic in the West, some people, towards Islam, because there's really lack of ignorance, really not understanding at all what this religion is all about. They do not understand the ideology of it. And that is the part that I'm sure Sam and others, what I can do is hopefully this thing, wishful thinking be eradicated. But it's a menace that has to be kept at the minimum at bay.
What's the menace?
By all, Quran's ideology. We talk about Islamic ideology, I'm saying. And so, and again, Tyler, I think that, or Taylor, it comes from lack of understanding about this religion. Once you get to know the horrific, radical, barbaric, backward, cruel, this ideology, then I cannot think of too many people, supporting this. Again, to just summarize, it comes from not understanding, and that is why when I participate in the rooms, I think Sam does a very good job, and others, we, kind of trying to, for those who may not talk about these concepts. Go in the details in the Sharia laws, talk about fatwas, and talk about child marriages and the rest of it, so people get an understanding, or the seeking, world domination, copper killing, and the rest of it. So this education is good, and once people become educated, of course, it's their prerogative to make the decision. But it comes from lack of ignorance. From being, being ignorant about this cult.
So, I am curious. Do you think that it is the people's interpretation of the Quran, or the Quran itself, or whatever, right? Or do you think it's just like, it's kind of just what people do. Some people just go that way. They just go like that, and they blame something, and then they shape it to whatever fucked up shit they want to do.
So this is actually a really interesting question. It's something I've thought about a bit. So imagine different forms of extremism, right? So my take is that the underlying ideology matters, right? That what the book says, what the underlying ideology says matters, right? So if we have an extremist Muslim, right? In a lot of cases, they can be very dangerous, right? They can be prone to violence, to religious, aggressive religious action that includes, many different acts that are, oftentimes pretty horrific. Whereas, think of an extremist Buddhist or like an extremist Jain, right? So a good example would be like an extremist Jain. So if a Jain takes their religion to the extreme, it's going to be extreme nonviolence, right? Because the underlying ideology matters. These are people who pluck the hairs out of their head one by one and sweep the ground in front of them because they're afraid to kill any, life form, right? Bob's not wrong. I do have a Carl Sagan quote in my profile. profile, so it dropped. So, but basically, like, I think the underlying ideology matters. So, if an extremist bases their extremism on something, right? They read the text literally, they follow the text literally to the letter, and if they are violent, I think it, to me, throws up a red flag that there's violence to be found in the underlying ideology, the underlying, belief.
Well, isn't that the question though, where it's like, okay, so are they more prone to being extremists, or are they gonna maybe they aren't exposed to that many ideologies, and like is it the underlying stuff, or just people warlike and it comes out whatever? I'm not trying to excuse the underlying ideology. I'm trying to explore whether or not it's like how much of it, like I feel like people, they can be, they might have a predisposition to be extreme and look for meaning if they don't feel like they have any, whether that's through violence or sweeping bugs in front of them. But I feel like I'm curious whether or not people are sometimes just predisposed to like want to be like murdery and like do shit like that.
Well, so what's the difference there? What's the difference between an extremist Muslim and an extremist Jain, and why we see such difference in the way that it's expressed? I mean, would you break that down just to cultural differences? Because I don't think that explains everything, right? Why is it that the extremist Jains are largely peaceful and like radically so a lot of times, but the extremist Muslims see violence as like a viable option or a reasonable way to conduct themselves in the world? What's the difference would be my question.
So I could just like throw shots in the dark, but I'm not familiar if there are, with the Jains or even the Buddhists, if there are like divergent sects or groups that go a whole different route. I'm not aware of that, right? I have no insight into that. I'm not saying that's a thing. I don't know whether it is or it's not. But my overall point is, humans tend to be warlike, right? And some people tend to chew over, like they tend to be more, I don't know what it is, but they tend to be more prone to being an extremist. But how does that connect with whether it's just extremism or violence is in them, or is it the underlying messages?
Right, and that's exactly what I'm trying to get at here is, why is it that certain groups are prone to violence and other groups are not prone to violence? If we're to take an honest reading of the situation, it seems to me to be some underlying ideology or belief, or I wouldn't say if we're just going to chalk it up to quote unquote people being warlike or something about our human nature, we would expect to see similar and predictable outcomes across all people at all times, right? Where we see, certainly there have been, violence in, virtually every human community over time, but certain communities seem to be much more prone to violence than other communities, right? And there is a question as to why that's the case, and right? I'm interested in the actual answer. I'm not interested in like the answer that makes me feel good or quote unquote doesn't discriminate against certain groups, right? Like I'm interested to see, well, if we see violence in the Muslim world, is there something about Islam that is encouraging that violence? And I would say it seems to be the case, right? I don't know if it's so different in well, I don't know if I want to make that statement that it was like, the same level in Christianity, but Christianity now has benefited from sort of being liberalized in the Western world, to where it's not as
fewer car bombs.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, it wasn't long ago, and they were crusading, into the Holy Land and burning people alive and like an auto da fe and
Glory days.
inquisitioning. Yeah, back in the good old days, right? I mean, I don't know. And I mean, you could make the same question. You could ask the same question about atheists, right? I mean, the Soviet Union was they were at least in name a bunch of atheists, right? And they had a coordinated campaign against religion, right? And they killed a lot of people, quote unquote, in the name of like eradicating religion or stamping out dissent or that kind of thing. There's a question there of whether that was a true like quote unquote atheist ideologically inspired set of actions. And I know a lot of Christians like to harp on this and say, yes, clearly that was atheism, discriminating against religious people. And I don't 100% disagree, but at the same time, I do think that you take someone like Stalin, for instance, right? I mean, he was just killing everybody. Anybody who saw it as a potential, opponent, right? And religious people actually got the lesser end of the stick than a lot of other ethnic groups or political groups or nationalist groups or whatever they consider.
So you could even go next level with this, right? And I don't know how you would, and so I have no. Obviously, we've already established neither of us have the answer, but if you look at now, is the ideology that encourages or can be interpreted to encourage violence more likely to be popular and more likely to survive longer because that's like what people connect with than ideology that doesn't, right? Like, do you see my point there? I'm sorry.
Yeah, or it could be the fact that ideologies that tend to be more aggressive spread more aggressively. I mean, it's just probably like a plain fact, right? That if you have a religion that's aggressive in spreading itself, it's probably going to spread more than a religion that is a bit more non-aggressive about its means of spreading, right? And we see in the past that Islam and Christianity, for instance, I mean, it was spread by the sword for sure, but it was also used to solidify political alliances, right? We have these nations converting to Christianity or nations converting to Islam, right? And that's oftentimes a way to solidify political alliances and other sort of power moves, right?
That is such a great and obvious point, and I wish you could adjust. I don't know how you ever would, but if you were to actually do this to adjust for that and to see which is more popular without the fact that you kill everybody who doesn't believe what you believe. I don't know how you adjust for that statistically, but that's definitely influences the spread of it.
Yeah, I don't know how you sorry, go ahead.
No, finish your dialogue. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, it's probably very hard to account historically for stuff like that, right? I mean, how do you take a tally of, I mean, the bottom line is that, yeah, I mean, religion was used to solidify alliances. It was used to, consolidate power. It was used to bring people together, right? Nations converted to Christianity, and then that became sort of the official state religion, and that was a way that nations allied with each other, bonded.
And also, when people make the argument that the godless atheists in China and in Russia, Soviet Union, and they killed hundreds of millions of people, a lot of people. One has to keep in mind the idea was not, Mark did not write his book, the first paragraph saying I'm an atheist, therefore I'm going to establish an economic system that is going to be anti-capitalist, and that was not the case. The case was actually the economic kind of idea in terms of how a society ought to be running its economy and the government that is provide equality of the wealth, income, and the rest of the stuff to the citizens of that country. Now, if atheism and not believing in the church was something that they had to do, but that was not the main driver. Actually, and only. But let me just finish it. And actually, the same thing is true, in China. And again, in China, they have some form of Eastern, philosophy in terms of spiritual kind of way of thinking and about the world. And then like in Italy and now, of course, in Germany, these people they were Christians, and there's no atheism was involved. So you can again. Perhaps part of it is true in terms of the atheism aspect of it, but the whole idea, the concept, was not about religion. It was just about the economic system in the Soviet Union and China.
I don't think that's true. I mean, I think Stalin clearly didn't like it. He wanted to destroy faith. I mean, they're doing food seizures to try to get people to lose faith in God, make them starve to death, shipping people to gulags, enormous amount of oppression. I don't agree that isn't. He outright vocally they wanted atheism to be pushed at the state level. It's like state promoted atheism. So they thought they thought religion was a tool, like for oppression. So I mean, I don't.
No, the church was an institution that competed for power.
I think that's the real answer in the Soviet Union.
Well, I mean,
for the supremacy of the state, basically.
Same thing happened kind of in Italy, in Germany, or various autocratic nations, China.
But Andrew's not wrong. I mean, in the Soviet Union, there was an active push for atheism, right? I mean, they had like young atheist clubs. They did things like they promoted.
I'm not atheist, and I want to push atheism. It's that the church was quite powerful, the Russian Orthodox Church, and Stalin didn't want to share power, so he consolidated that by weakening the church.
Well, but he wanted atheism to be a state religion either way, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Yes, but for instrumental reason, not for ideological.
How would we go about showing that? Like, what would we reference? Because obviously, I think there's. Well, no, I got you, but I'm saying, like, which sources would you recommend? Because as far as I can tell, it wasn't just, hey, they're competing for power, therefore let's exterminate them. It was faith is bad. No, I understand. I'm just saying what dots are you connecting that would demonstrate that in some concretized way? Because for me, it's like, if you just look at the stuff that he said vocally, like the actual stuff he claimed, like faith being, faith in general is an oppressive tool, and it should be eliminated. And then atheism is clearly superior.
Something that is also entrenched in certain ideologies on the left. But I'm just saying, similar to other fascist countries in Europe, the main drive, it seems, was this consolidation of power, not like ideological thing.
I just put in chat GPT and I hopefully asked the question correctly. So I asked the question, did Karl Marx, in his Das Kapital book, encourage atheism? Here's the answer. I'm just going to give you the short version of it. Karl Marx's Das Kapital does not directly promote or encourages atheism in the way a religious critic like the Communist Manifesto or his earlier writing do. However, it does reflect and reinforce his atheistic worldview indirectly through his criticism of capitalism, religion, and ideology. So he was criticizing again capitalism, religion, and ideology. So again, what I'm trying to say is the main idea is not let's just go ahead and create nations of atheists. It has something to do with the economic system, has something to do with being against capitalism and trying to establish an economic system, which would be the thing that I just said earlier. Now, if there was an entailment of that somehow opposition to the church would have been beneficial to the instrument, being instrumental to the government's success. Solid. Okay, well, maybe dictators do that and wanted to have all of the power. And some of the power, this is actually mentioned I think Bob said that. So that is just using this to hold the entire power 100%. And so that kind of makes people do this all the time. So anyway, that's the main point I'm trying to make when the Christian and the Muslim talked about here's what an atheist society will do. Millions of people get killed. Yeah, but that is not because being the idea is not being. Again, I said what I wanted to say.
So Marx was very laser focused on this idea of class and class struggle and anti-capitalism, and he was primarily an economic and philosophical theorist, right? He wrote very little on religion, and even what he wrote on religion wasn't necessarily anti-religious. Even his famous claim, right, the religion is the opium of the masses, isn't necessarily a criticism of religion. It's more a criticism of the fact that he saw religion as being a way that people sort of cope with suffering, right? And he didn't necessarily think that religion was the bad thing. He thought that the capitalism that caused the suffering was the bad thing, right? That he wanted to attack. But that was Marx, right? But we can't say the same thing about the Soviet Union, China, Cambodia, any of these other communist societies. Typically, these were officially atheistic societies where they had overt, active edicts against religion and for atheism. I'm never going to deny that the Soviet Union was an outright atheist state, right? They wanted to promote atheism. They wanted to suppress religion, especially in the early days. They kind of loosened up in the end. But the last point that I will make, though, is that you can't then lay all of the deaths that happened under the Soviet Union at the feet of atheism. Right? It was not the result of atheism that Stalin undertook all these political repressions, right? He wasn't executing people and sending people to the gulags necessarily in the name of atheism. He was sending them there in the name of, squashing the political opposition and, extracting cheap labor and, suppressing people who he thought could rise up in sort of a, counter, nationalist struggle, right? I mean, it wasn't atheism that motivated him to do these things. It was political and power, repression.
I actually think.
Let me just finish just quick. I'll be very quick. People typically, I think also the Christians and theists will talk about this. It is the opium of the people. Almost there is a kind of intimation that Karl Marx recognized the importance of religion and being a reality. Actually, he perceived it as being delusional. And here's the exact wording of what he said. I wrote it down so I can remember. Karl Marx: religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of the heartless world, and the soul of the soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. So in a sense, people trying to find solace, comfort, justice, and the rest of it. So they reach out to these concepts, something like religion. So it becomes an opium, a drug that soothes, comforts them, solaces them. So that's the entire context. And often, almost 99% of the time, people will just tell you about the opium of the people, of the masses. In this case, what I have is just people, of the masses. But it is really the intention of his comment is a completely different thing. See, the religion being a delusional kind of idea that people reach out. Anyway, that's a brief.
I don't like that.
I wanted to say something very quickly here. So even if atheism wasn't the official position of the Soviet Union, which it was, even if they did things they didn't do like these horrible things in the name of atheism, you can still show that there's a causal link between atheism and these horrible acts. So, for instance, the causal link might be because atheists don't tend to believe in eternal punishment, and if you don't tend to believe in eternal punishment and you're a horrible person, then you're freer to commit these sorts of horrendous acts. So it doesn't have to be in the name of atheism. There can still be a causal connection between atheism and genocides which were committed in the Soviet Union. That being said, the Soviet Union and communist countries in Eastern Europe were explicitly atheistic, avowed atheists, like material atheists. So, for instance, in their yearly communiques, they express opinions like
atheist propaganda.
Yeah, I literally
not tons of atheist propaganda. Sorry, just want to finish. Not tons of atheist propaganda, but like their official position was that materialism is true, that we need to extinguish this belief in souls from people, that we need to make people realize that humans are just chemical reactions, that God does not exist. Blah blah blah, and this was started from like an early age. This sort of indoctrination. So, for instance, I went to a communist school, and I started school in a communist country. And starting from grade 2, you were exposed to material, like explicitly atheistic material. You were.
I don't think anyone denies.
Yeah, like I said, I literally just spent like a couple of minutes discussing all this and stating all this.
I don't like the point about, you didn't do it in the name of atheism, because, listen, all that matters is, whether or not humans who are atheists do more harm. Now, if there weren't the Scandinavian countries that are atheistic and that are very peaceful, and there was only atheistic countries that were violent and brutal, I'd be like, maybe we should avoid this. Maybe we should keep atheism secret because it's too dangerous. But, luckily there are secular places that are pretty chill. So I don't know.
Yeah, those are not atheistic countries, Sam.
You don't think that the Scandinavians are more atheist? They're one of the most secular places in the world.
So you said they're atheistic, right? So if religious people are over 50% in those countries, then they're not atheistic.
They're not.
The true atheistic countries were the Soviet Union, communist countries, blah blah blah.
But the Scandinavian countries are not over 50%.
Well, the other thing too.
Oh yes, they are.
There's stats like that because when you're born, you're automatically inducted to the Church of Sweden. But most people don't actually hold religious belief. Most people don't go to church. Most people don't actually, religion doesn't enter their lives. And the people who are religious aren't, they very rarely does their political views come downstream from their religious. I think some actual numbers like 5 to 10% are religious.
Well, hold on. His underlying argument was that it's because of you don't have a afterlife, like a heaven or hell or whatever. So wouldn't that apply? How do you feel about Israel?
Yeah, we can fact check that, what Bob said. So generally, an explicit belief in God tends to hover around 45% in Norway, but the rest of the people believe in some sort of universal spirit or life force, as in a non-human universal life force. I mean, that doesn't sound like atheism. That sounds kind of like
us actually believe it, and if they do, it informs nothing about their behaviors or.
Well, you're just saying that, but you don't know how these sorts of beliefs implicitly influence people's beliefs. Were you making assertions with that? What?
We have
Bob's point is that the confirmed most secular or atheistic countries in the world are also some of the happiest, safest, highest performing, most well. It's good. Honestly, you could probably make the argument to the opposite too. That some of the least, safe, least happy, least off countries are some of the most religious countries in the world.
exactly. Some of the least religious countries were some of the most violent, as in, the Soviet Union, China. So you can't exactly make that sort of argument.
But honestly, so first of all, I mean, the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. I mean, if we're talking about history, we can go back to see what. All right, so you want to go? We want to dig back through history and compare religious countries to non-religious countries and see which ones caused the most violence. I don't know if you want to do that.
I mean, it seems like a fair comparison. If you want to talk about the most atheistic countries, you should talk about Norway and Sweden.
So as a
people believe in God in those countries, first of all, and the rest believe in some sort of universal spirit. Explicitly believe
statistics in a while, my friend. Well, I'm not going to just sit here and
explicitly atheistic belief hover around 15 to 20%. So that's not an atheistic country.
It is a devoutly secular country, and a country that is
what does devout?
Yeah, Tyler. Only 10% of the Norwegian population actually go to church. These are not questions.
What's the number of Hungarian population going to go to church?
Higher than that.
What percent of the Hungarian population do you think goes to church?
If you don't interact with religion in any meaningful way, I don't know. You don't read the Bible, you don't affirm any beliefs, you don't wear a cross, you don't talk about Jesus, you don't. If it's not visible on you in any way that you're a Christian, I don't know. I think it's more possible to say that, okay, look, I'm a member of the Church of Sweden. I count as a Christian in my country.
Agamemnon, I just pulled up the results from Pew, and Sweden, percent non-religious, so this is the percent of people who identify as non-religious, is 46% of the population.
Okay.
Percent atheist is 26%. Percent unaffiliated is 29%. The total combined percent of either non-religious, atheist, or unaffiliated is 73% of the country. So 73% of the country could broadly be classified as either non-religious, atheistic, or unaffiliated.
Okay, first of all, non-religious math errors you're committing right there, because there's going to be obvious overlap between the non-religious and the atheists. So you can't just
do I need to put a plus sign between these? What are you talking about? Well, no, because you
so there's going to be an obvious. Okay, there's going to be an obvious overlap between non-religious
plus 26.
Okay, I'm going to let you finish. I didn't realize we were done. Not done yet. Are you done?
I don't know. I mean, go ahead, I guess.
Okay.
What is your main point? Can you just maybe 2 points you want to say? What is it that you're trying to say?
So the main point is, first of all, to respond to Tyler, you can't naively add up these numbers because there's going to be an obvious overlap between the non-religious and the atheists. As in, anybody who's an atheist is also going to be non-religious, so you can't add the non-religious to the atheists. Like grade school.
How math works, Agamemnon? You don't seem to understand how math works.
Yeah, I just want to finish.
So we have well, this is just on the same point. You want to finish?
Am I wrong? Or is this the guy who wants the monologue?
It's just nobody's listening.
He has a Carl Sagan quote in his profile.
Okay, the new fundamentalist atheist. Okay.
Fundamentalist atheist. Bro, you're just embarrassing yourself now.
So, I
think it's embarrassing to add the guys manipulates even though we overlap. That's I don't know who taught you math, but that's somebody who's just in grade 2 would do something like that.
They're not.
So what are you saying the overlap is here?
They're not. You can't take those two groups and say the number of irreligious people plus the number of atheists. You can't do that.
Well, no. Because we have 100% of people, right? So they poll people, and we get 100% of the result, right? So 46% identified exclusively as non-religious. 26% identified as atheist, right? That's not an overlap if you're talking about an exclusive result, right? It's like,
Right.
you know,
If you're talking about an exclusive result.
right. So if we're adding the numbers together, then it comes to 73%. I mean, I can look up another poll if you want me to, but I mean, this is Pew.
If the poll states that it's exclusive, then that's one thing. I'm just saying. Like if you ask someone how many people are there in this room, and you're like, well, there are 10 men and 5 plumbers. Like, okay, but some of the plumbers might be men, right? So there aren't.
Yeah, I mean, this is Pew, and Pew knows what they're doing. I mean, I can read you that methodology if you want to get into like how the sausage is made, but this is just kind of like cope and muddying the waters to sort of like trying to undermine what the obvious point is here, that Sweden is a fundamentally like one of the least religious nations in the world.
So
So first of all, I just want to point out we're discussing atheism, right? We're not discussing like religiousness. And when it comes to atheism, less than half of the people, you said 26%, express atheistic beliefs. The rest of them, my contention was that people don't have these explicit.
What does non-religious mean to you?
Believe in some sort of universal spirit or some sort of divine transcendent entity, which they don't call God. I wouldn't call that an atheistic belief. Okay, so atheists are still going to be a very much minority in Sweden, according to the statistics you've so conveniently provided. So I don't know why you're trying to argue that these are majority atheist countries.
I didn't say it was majority. When did I say it was majority atheist? I never said.
Well, then your argument is not relevant.
I said it was a profoundly non-religious country.
Profoundly. Okay, let's look at them countries which are majority
One of
atheist.
the least religious countries in the world.
The least religious countries in the world. Well, that would be China. Okay, that would be the Soviet Union. That would be
the Soviet Union does not exist, my friend. I don't know if you want to move out of the 1980s, but the Soviet Union.
Yeah, that would be North Korea.
And that would be Russia, and Ukraine and Belarus, and those are religious countries.
Okay, I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
What did you just do?
Are you done?
Somebody else want to try this guy?
The least country are actually North Korea, China, and the countries with the lowest crime rates are actually Italy.
You got reliable guy from North Korea, man. You might want to inform the experts, because that would be quite the feat.
Yeah, we do have reliable information in China.
We do not have reliable stuff. You are, man. You're something.
Oh no. I meant to say North Korea is a black.
Just because you say it with a state of, just because you say it with no impulse doesn't make it true.
You have no impulse control.
So,
Wait, I have no impulse control. What do you mean?
You know, Jay.
90% of people eat hot dogs in North Korea.
Okay, here's the argument.
75% of people prefer the color purple in North Korea. These are all reliable statistics from North Korea, I promise.
So argument, the main points that are being made, and I think I'm sure you get into justice this, that when we're talking about atheistic countries or countries that people are not religious, and these are Scandinavian countries, European countries, is that basically religion is a cultural institution. For example, the Church of England. You could be an atheist, you could be non-religious, but you'll be attending the church, functions, the church, just because it's a cultural thing that you participate in it. And a lot of atheists do that. That's kind of number one. Number two, in concert or with the we want to call them atheistic or religious, tendencies in European countries, the concept of the secular countries ideas is hugely important, because there is a separation of church and state. And I fully understand. Don't give me the idea of the King of England. I know they all have kings, but the business of the government is being run by the government, but not by the religious, ideology. So that's the distinction that I guess I hear people are trying to make, and that's kind of my way of thinking about it. Now, the main point is, if you compare and contrast the well-being of the citizens, actually, in European countries, in the secular countries, and perhaps some of them, some portion of them might be religious, and they are, and you compare this to the countries, the Islamic countries in the Middle East, you see that the well-being of the citizen in Europe and secular countries are by far better than the plight of people in Afghanistan, in Yemen, in Indonesia, in Saudi Arabia, and the rest of it. That is the main point is being made. So the religion is not really doing any good, I'm talking about specifically Islam here, in terms of helping its citizens. If anything else, it destroys the human rights, it is cruel, and again, the Sharia laws, and particularly, as I've mentioned several times, the plight of the women and the children and basic human rights do not exist there. So that's the main point is being made. Now, you can bang your head against the wall as much as you want, you wish, but that does not change the results in the field. And that's the point is being made. And you can play with these numbers all day long in terms of who's atheist, who's not, in Sweden, Scandinavian country. But the main point is what I just mentioned. What part of it that you don't understand?
So it's not that I don't understand, it's that you're switching the subject. So the subject was, we're discussing atheism versus theism, as in which produces better social outcomes. And you switch from atheism, comparing atheism to Islam. Okay, I agree, Islam is an oppressive ideology that tends to hinder social and scientific progress. And the analysis you're doing is a very simple-minded univariate analysis, as in you're comparing one country to another, and ignoring other social variables which would influence crime rates. So, for instance, the age of a population, the more young people are in a country, the more crime you tend to have. Atheistic countries tend to have a much older population. The better social conditions are in a country, the less crime you tend to have, the more social disparity are in a country, the more crime you tend to have. And atheistic countries tend to have better economic conditions. But the causality could be reversed, as in when there are better social conditions, more people tend to leave religion, as in people who just adhere to religion just for economic reasons, those people tend to leave religion in countries which are better off. Now, if you want to look at what science has actually found in terms of religion, the correlation between religion and well-being, well, the correlation between lack of religion and worse social outcomes has been shown in 60 studies, which showed that those who are less religious tend to engage in more crime, tend to divorce more, have higher rates of depression, blah, 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 tend to abuse more drugs. So yeah, there's a very strong correlation between irreligiousness and worse social outcomes in scientific studies.
I do want to point out that
in what country would you point to that this is the case on a widespread scale? Because we just pointed to a number of countries where religion is low and outcomes are high, but you in the one breath tried to say, well, there's so many other factors that go into it other than just religion to try and explain away. Are you gonna let me finish?
Yeah.
So basically, you tried to explain away the high rankings of these non-religious countries, right? But in the same breath, you tried to then explain why atheism somehow produces these low rankings. So you can't have it both ways, right? You can't say, well, there's this atheist population that has these high rankings, and that doesn't mean anything. But when it agrees with my ideology that atheists have these low rankings, then clearly that's the case if you see any population of atheists where there's low rankings. It's just not a good way to do.
Not exactly. What I'm pointing out, you're cherry picking the data and you're doing a univariate analysis. Do you just want to let me finish? Because I like to finish. You're cherry picking me literally. First of all, you're cherry picking the data. So you're comparing Sweden to, I don't know, Afghanistan as opposed to comparing Sweden to Italy or comparing Sweden to Greece or comparing Sweden to, I don't know, religious countries in Europe. And that seems like a much more apt comparison because now you're controlling for demographic variables. So, for instance, demographic variables like the age distribution of people seems to be much more similar between Spain and Sweden as compared to between Sweden and Afghanistan. Right? So that first you're cherry picking the data and you're doing this simple analysis. If you actually want to see what the effect of religion on crime is or social outcomes, then you have to compare like to like, apples to apples. And people have done that. People have conducted 60 scientific studies, for instance, on the effect of religion on crime. And in a meta-analysis of 60 studies, religion was found to be a deterrent of crime. That is, those who are less religious are likely to commit more crime. Same with drug abuse, more in depression. Yeah, okay, sure. It's called If You Love Me, Keep My Commandments, the meta-analysis of 60 studies on the effect of religion on crime, published in the Journal of Social Psychology, I think, 2014.
So then why is it that these atheists come again? So it seems to me that you want to wait. So why can't I just wave my hand then at that and say, there's all these other factors at play. It's not just non-religion. It's all these other social factors, right? We can't blame atheism for the crime or the depression or whatever, right? It's reductive to say that it's this one thing. Why is it valid when you say it, but it's not valid if I say it?
Oh, okay. So, because the way these studies are conducted is that they control for other variables. So, for instance, when you try to establish some sort of causal relation between two variables, the way you do it is you compare people of the same socioeconomic status, people in the same countries, and other variables.